Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we saw how architectural sketching evolved from prehistoric times to what it is today, and also the importance of sketching in the design process. As a continuation to it, in this video, we'll touch upon the basic techniques of architectural sketching. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, this video will give you a fundamental overview of the techniques. I'm Salman, an architectural illustrator. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. Line drawing. Line is the most fundamental element used in architectural sketching. The lines used in a freehand drawing are continuous, wiggly, and imperfect. The imperfections are part of the style of architectural sketching, and if you're a beginner who's trying really hard to make your sketches look perfect and straight, trust me, you don't have to. The reason I say this is because sketching is the first idea but not the final idea. If you ever try to draw a straight line without a ruler, most likely the line ended up not straight but being a little slightly curved. And if you actually succeed in drawing a freehand straight line, then it will take a decent amount of time and concentration. And that's just one line. When you have to do it over and over again to create a whole image, it takes ages. I emphasize this is because I have spent a lot of time trying to make my sketches look perfect and straight and then realizing that that's not how it's done. One benefit of the shaky lines is that you can draw them quickly while still giving the perception that they are straight. Shaky lines are a reflection of the thought you put in while you're drawing. It gives the impression that a design is being developed and it's open for improvements, whereas the lines drawn perfectly straight give the impression that a design is fully complete. This restricts you from going beyond and exploring a possibly better design option through your sketches because you spend too much time and effort on those perfect straight lines. So to draw your lines easily, remember not to rest your wrist on the paper while drawing. Just use your pinky fingers to guide you through. Also, don't just use your wrist to draw, but use your entire arm to make one single continuous stroke or broken down dotted strokes. But make sure whatever line you draw looks confident and not wavering in bits. Another thing about lines is to give emphasis with the start and end points, a sort of an extension line that gives a decisive look. These overlapping extension lines will help you to draw quickly rather than making every corner look perfect. This technique will actually make your final drawing look more finished. Perspective. In simple terms, perspective means objects closer to you are larger and objects far away from you are smaller. Perspective is a critical part of architectural sketching. Perspective creates a sense of depth by representing the building as if it were receding into the distance. This helps to give the building a three-dimensional appearance, even though it is a drawing on a two-dimensional surface. By accurately representing the form and shape of the building, perspective can help you make your sketches look more realistic. This is especially important when your architectural sketches are part of a design proposal or as a part of a presentation. By creating a visual representation of the building, perspective can help support design decision making. For example, you can use perspective sketches to identify areas of the building that needs to be revised or to explore different design options. To draw in perspective, start by drawing a horizon line and a vanishing point, and then use lines to indicate the height, width, and depth of the building. So there are three types of perspective used in architectural sketching. One-point perspective. One-point perspective uses a single vanishing point to create a sense of depth and volume. This type of perspective is used in interior drawings or to represent buildings viewed from front or rear. In one-point perspective, all the lines that are parallel to the observer's line of sight converge at a single vanishing point on the horizon line. This vanishing point creates a sense of depth and volume, making the building appear to recede into the distance. It is often used to create a straightforward, clear view of the building and is particularly useful for representing simple, rectangular buildings or spaces. Two-point perspective. Two-point perspective uses two vanishing points to represent an object with depth and volume. It is used to represent a side view or bird's eye view of a building or slightly larger interior views. In two-point perspective, Lines that are parallel to the observer's line of sight converge at two vanishing points on the horizon line. One vanishing point represents the front face of the object while the other represents the back. The two-point perspective is also the most common used type of perspective in architectural drawing. Three-point perspective. Three-point perspective uses three vanishing points and creates a unique viewing angle for the subject. This type is often used to represent an object from an oblique angle, such as a view from a corner or from above. One vanishing point represents the front of the object, while the second represents the back, and the third represents the top or bottom of the object, depending on where you place the point. This type of perspective provides a clear view of the building's height, depth, and width, making it particularly useful for representing complex or irregular shaped buildings. So, by incorporating perspective into your architectural sketches, you can create drawings that accurately represent the form and shape of the building and also effectively communicate your design ideas. Line weights. Line weight refers to the thickness of line used in a sketch. It refers to the visual weight or emphasis of a line and can be used to create contrast, define a form, or also create a sense of depth. In architectural sketching, line weight is used to indicate the relative importance of different elements in a drawing. Heavier lines are typically used for elements in the foreground or outline of an object, while lighter lines are used for elements in the background. Line weight can be achieved through various mediums such as pencils, pens, markers, etc., and can be adjusted by varying the pressure applied to the drawing tool. When your drawings need to communicate a lot of different and overlapping information, so by using line weights, you can effectively communicate the different informations provided in the drawing, and you can also guide how the eyes move around the drawing. Shading and shadows. Shading and shadows can help you create a sense of depth and volume in your sketch and make them look more realistic. Depicting shadows gives an additional layer of information to your sketches. So how to apply this technique depends on the medium that you're using, whether it's a pencil, pen, watercolor, or so on. Whatever the medium, here are the steps that you need to follow to apply them. The first thing to do is to determine the direction of the light source. This will help you decide which parts of the building are in shadow and which are in light. You can, of course, assume any point around as a light source, and the shadows will be in the opposite direction of the form. The next thing to do is to use hatching or shading. To add shading, you can use hatching and cross-hatching techniques. Hatching involves drawing parallel lines in the same direction to indicate shading, while cross-hatching involves drawing parallel lines in two different directions to create a more dense and intense shading effect. There are many varieties of hatching techniques other than these, like stippling, contour hatching, and so on. With a pencil, you can create a gradual transition between light and dark by shading. This will look more smooth, and you can also blend it using your fingers or a blender. The next thing to do is to vary the density. To create a sense of depth, you can vary the density of the shading. Areas that are farther away from the light source will typically be darker, while areas that are closer to the light will be lighter. One quick way to do this is to determine the darkest area first and apply the highest value of shading or hatching to it. So naturally, all the other areas will be lighter and the lightest. The last step in this process is to pay attention to the cast shadows. Cast shadows are created when an object blocks the light source. To add cast shadows to your architectural sketches, use darker shading to represent the shadows and make sure that the shadows are correctly positioned relative to the building and the light source. We don't need to go into scirography and use accurate shadows or angles for freehand sketches, but just make sure that they are not way too off. Textures and details. Adding textures and details to architectural sketches is important because it makes the sketches more visually appealing and convey a sense of materiality. In architecture, textures and details are an important element that bring your building to life and also add a sense of realism. You can use lines to indicate the textures of different materials, such as brick, stone, and wood. Before you start texturing your sketches, take the time to study textures of materials you want to represent. Observe how light and shadow interacts with the textures and consider the patterns and details that are characteristic of the materials. The tools you use will greatly impact the look and feel of the textures. Experiment with different mediums such as pencils, pens, markers, or watercolors to find the one that works best for your textures. Shading techniques such as cross-hatching, stippling, washes, and pencil shadings can be used to create an illusion of texture. As for the details, focus on smaller details in the sketch that can add some life to it. Adding windows, doors, roof tiles, etc. can help make the sketch look more complete and convey a sense of the materials that are used in the building. Be careful not to get carried away in this process. Just learn to balance the right amount of detailing with the time taken to do them. For example, if you're drawing roof tiles, you don't have to indicate every single tile in the building, but you can still bring that effect using the outlines. This sense of judgment comes with a bit of practice. Text and annotations. So apart from making the actual sketch, you might still need to add more details to it through text and annotations. This is because no matter how much you detail a sketch, there are few things that can get misinterpreted when somebody else looks at it. So it's always better to fill those gaps and leave no room for misunderstandings. Also, you might not be able to fit every detail about your design just visually, so these texts and annotations come in handy. These become part of your visual style, which makes your drawing look unique. You can try working with different styles of arrows, labeling, and lettering to see which works best for you. Dimensions can be used to indicate the size and proportion of the elements used in the sketch. They are important for ensuring that the design meets the required specifications. You can pick a font style of your own and stick through it throughout all your drawings, thus making it very distinctive to yourself. Titles and captions can be used to provide context and information about the sketch. They can be used to indicate the name of the project, the date, and the name of the person who created the sketch. And finally, notes can be used to provide additional information such as design considerations, materials, and construction details. They can also be used to indicate any changes made to the design during the sketching process. Practice and experiment. Finally, don't be afraid to experiment and try new techniques. Study the works of different architects, artists, and designers to understand different styles of architectural sketching. Look at how they create lines, shading, textures, and annotations to create different effects. Develop your own unique style by combining elements from different styles that you admire. This can help you create sketches that are unique and representative of your own vision. Try sketching with different types of mediums, such as pencils, pens, watercolors, and digital tools to see how different styles can be achieved with different medium. Experimentation often involves mistake, but that's okay. The goal is to learn and to try new things. And the obvious part, the more you practice, the better you will become. Spend at least a few minutes practicing sketching because that's the only guaranteed way to improve your technique. Build a habit of sketching in your daily life, maybe when you're traveling or at the end of your day, and you will start to see your results. So that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching and we hope you found it informative and helpful. Please hit that like button and comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions. Remember, architectural sketching is a tool for communication, and with a bit of practice, you can become a better communicator. Thank you for watching and we'll see you on the next one.